Halo 4 and 5 I think sometimes get too bad a rap. They aren't the greatest Halo games, granted, but if they were standalone titles, unrelated to the franchise, I believe they would have been received fairly well, as they're not awful experiences by any stretch of the imagination. Even as part of the Halo series, they do have the occasional bright spot, one of the brightest being the mission Swords of Sanghelios in Halo 5, which is the game's best level and the one I want to chat more about during this video. Before we get into things, let's first remind ourselves of Halo 5's story leading into the mission. Fireteam Osiris, led by Jameson Locke and including ODST alumni Buck, are sent to the planet Kamchatka to rescue Dr. Catherine Halsey amidst an enormous battle between Jul 'Mdama's Covenant forces and the Prometheans. After they successfully reach Halsey and take out 'Mdama, the action switches to Master Chief's Blue Team aboard an abandoned Oni research station. The Covenant attack, forcing Blue Team to destroy it, but not before Chief receives a message from Cortana pointing him in the direction of the planet Meridian. Instead of returning to the UNSC Infinity for briefing as ordered, Blue Team instead decide to disobey and head off in search of Cortana. With there being great concern about the re-emergence of Cortana and Blue Team's actions, Fireteam Osiris are sent to bring them in, and following a heated battle against the Warden Eternal, a Promethean serving under Cortana, they eventually catch up with Master Chief and company. Chief triumphs over Locke in hand-to-hand combat, and Blue Team promptly leave to explore a Guardian, a peacekeeping forerunner robot of sorts used to police entire worlds. The Guardian soon activates and teleports to the planet Genesis, taking Blue Team with it, where they meet the Warden Eternal and Chief is reunited with Cortana, who reveals her rampancy has been cured using Forerunner technology. Fireteam Osiris meanwhile manages to barely escape following the Guardian's disappearance, and are next sent to the elite's homeworld of Sanghelios, where they intend to use a Guardian hidden there to track down Blue Team. The dialogue during Swords of Sanghelios' opening cutscene is worth noting as it hints at the history between Locke and the Arbiter.
So, you wrote a target dossier on the Arbiter when you were with Oni?
That was 6 years ago. What's your point?
You recommended assassinating him.
After we killed millions of our people.
So why didn't you?
Things changed.
A history 343 Industries decided to expand upon by adding scenes to Halo 2's Anniversary Edition, effectively retroactively fitting the game with extra story beats.
You are a hunter, yes. A seeker of things.
That's not the official job title, but it's close enough.
And now you hunt other Spartans.
I'm not so much hunting a Spartan, as I'm hunting the Spartan.
2 was framed less as a straight-up story about Master Chief, the tale we all know and love, and was instead recontextualized as the Arbiter detailing the events of the sequel to Locke. I say was because they have now been removed, although they can still be viewed in the theatre. That is a good thing. Someone new to the series would have had parts of the story spoiled, and might have understandably been quite confused as to who this new Spartan was, especially seeing as he then disappears from the series entirely for a long time. For those more familiar with Halo, it would have been equally underwhelming. They are riddled with inconsistencies, and I don't see how they can actually fit into events which follow. What I will say is that Locke's "I'm not so much hunting a Spartan as I am hunting the Spartan" line is brilliant, and I wish he'd have shown more of that attitude in Halo 5. Back to the level itself, upon taking control of Locke, you are immediately given a brief briefing by one of the Swords of Sanghelios.
Arbiter has united the Keeps and formed a new alliance, the Swords of Sanghelios. With Arbiter's victories and the death of Jul 'Mdama, the Covenant remnants grow desperate. They have begun an assault on Vadam lands, targeting Arbiter specifically.
Which is followed by a minute or two spent exploring. What I love about this mission is that it's dripping in atmosphere and genuinely feels like something completely out of the norm. The majority of Halo's original trilogy is spent on either different installations, Earth or High Charity, and 4 takes place on another Forerunner world. For the first time ever, you get to set foot on the home planet of one of the series' other species, something I'd been hoping would happen for a long time prior to Halo 5's release. The statues, some crumbling, Sunayon in the distance, the shadowy canyons peppered with Sangheli ruins. It's a gorgeous setting aesthetically, and for me, playing this section shortly after the game's release is perhaps my most enduring memory of 5's campaign. What I love most about the level, even more than the introductory minute or two, is the way the rocky surroundings you find yourself in are used to create a series of incredibly engaging encounters. The multi-level, multi-lane arenas you fight the Covenant in don't feel like they've been designed as places for combat first and as believable environments second. They are one and the same. Compare this to later mission The Breaking, for example. In my video examining that level, which you can watch by clicking the card appearing on screen now, I spoke of how its areas were seemingly designed less as functional places that existed for an express purpose within the world, and more as Call of Duty style gauntlets with cover and enemy placement to match. They might have worked in service of gameplay, although I personally didn't think so, but spend even the shortest amount of time thinking about what purpose they served outside of combat, or why they were laid out the way they were, and they quickly begin to lose any appeal they once had. The canyons and desert areas of Sanghelios, on the other hand, make complete sense as combat arenas. In an environment of its type, there are going to be outcrops and valleys, and indeed less structurally sound parts you can smash your way through when wearing powered assault armour. We've all been there. They make the first half of the level an absolute joy to play. Not only are you battling the Covenant in a very unique and very refreshing setting, but the way it's laid out allows Halo 5's combat to really take centre stage. If you want to take your enemies by surprise, there are plenty of opportunities to flank them using existing paths or by creating them yourself. If you want to take things head on, the natural environment and accompanying ruins provide cover which doesn't feel out of place. If you want to add an element of platforming to proceedings, jumping and boosting your way across different parts of the map, occasionally slowing down to throw in a ground pound, you can. And with each area being so densely packed full of options, it's easy enough to switch between them on the fly should you decide to mix things up. Each section you make your way through during Swords of Sanghelios' early stages also varies the challenges you have to overcome. From taking on Covenant and a turret during a fairly in-your-face encounter, you progress to another which puts your ability to fight at range to the test, before you reach my favourite of the three, which requires you choose from left or right paths snaking along the edge of a valley. These short, concentrated bursts of combat in thoughtfully designed arenas are also connected by narrow sections 343 Industries uses to continue building out the world around you.
Bodies ahead. Swords of Sanghelios. Covenant must have caught him by surprise.
Shi'unsei Reima'u. Shi'unsei Wute Hade.
What's that, Vale?
Sangheli burial prayer. A warrior at birth, a warrior in death.
Much of the time, you could be mistaken for Halo 5 being a Bungie-developed title, such as the quality of design and obvious attention paid to pacing. On the topic of pacing, there's a final encounter, one smaller in scale than those previous, which acts as a palate cleanser before you move on to the mission's climax. Again, you're given options. Taking on the Covenant at ground or close to ground level seems like the only choice, but keep your eyes peeled and you might find a path leading to a turret, which proves particularly useful once a pair of hunters arrive on the scene. A quick note on Halo 5's hunters. I'm in two minds about them. On the one hand, the way one of them will react when their mate is killed as they go into overdrive I like, as it really drives home the idea of a bond being shattered and accentuates the anger they must feel because of that. They're also a very intimidating opponent to go up against, which hasn't always been the case in past games. On the other hand, their attacks do not feel fair. I always have a very hard time getting in close due to their melee attacks being impossible or nigh on impossible to dodge, and the assault cannon shots which home in on you are frustrating at the best of times. It's a real shame, as they end up being both an upgrade and a downgrade in equal measure. Once the two blue beasts have both been put down, some very welcome firepower is dropped in.
Your Commander Palmer thought you would find these useful.
I do like the way she thinks.
Covenant reinforcements move on the Elder Council chamber. Time is running low, Spartans.
We'll clear a path to the Arbiter. Just be ready for extraction.
I shall await your signal.
Mount up, Osiris!
At which point, it's time to carve a path to the Arbiter. I've a huge amount of time for the track Walk Softly, which plays during this section. A rework of the Halo 4 piece Mantis, it might not be the most Halo sounding tune you'll ever hear, but its almost industrial sound fits the action on screen perfectly. It also stands out because the majority of Swords of Sanghelios which precedes it, in particular the 3 larger encounters earlier on, doesn't have much of a soundtrack, which is one of my only criticisms of that part of the mission. I think it's fair to say that the Mantis sequence itself is not the most nuanced affair in the world, but it certainly does a job. That job being to illustrate and get you involved in the conflict which has erupted across the planet. The first area or two you blast your way through are nothing to write home about in terms of design. In fact, I'd guess they are there primarily to give you time to get used to piloting the Mantis itself. They are not complicated, and most enemies appear in your field of view from the outset, meaning you shouldn't have too much trouble getting through things relatively unscathed, or somewhat scathed in my case. The more open area after, however, is bang on the money. It features a 3-lane structure, a good amount of verticality, and it's designed in such a way that you can traverse it on foot should you prefer to get up close and personal, or if you're left without a vehicle. The Mantis is absolutely the more entertaining option, but you should still hopefully be able to triumph even if you end up without one. There's also a lot going on, with Covenant dropships ferrying in more troops and multiple pairs of hunters to deal with, along with several wraiths. By the time you reach the other end of the area, you definitely feel like you've earned it. After fighting your way up to where the Arbiter is located, you're given a quick reminder as to why he's held in such high regard by humans and Sangheli alike, at which point Locke joins him for a chinwag and Swords of Sanghelios draws to a close.
Spartan Jameson Locke, UNSC. Captain Lasky sends his greetings, and thanks you for your cooperation.
Oni, out of the shadows. The spies announce themselves now, Agent Locke.
I'm a Spartan now, sir.
I know who you are.
Playing through Swords of Sanghelios a number of times and writing the script for this video has only further cemented my view that it's the best level in Halo 5. Its first half features intelligently designed encounters in an environment which is jaw-dropping but also makes sense, and it's also delightfully paced, with 343 Industries effortlessly switching between faster combat and slower, more thoughtful moments. Its second is an explosive crescendo which really helps build momentum ahead of the next couple of missions which also take place on the planet. It may not be so intricately designed, but it adds variety I think was needed by the time you reach the mission's midway point. As mentioned during the introduction, Halo 5 is not well liked by many and loved by even less, but I would argue there is a lot to love about Swords of Sanghelios. It is, for me, the cream of the crop when it comes to the Halo 5 experience. Thanks for watching the video, boys, girls and Spartans. If you enjoyed it, do consider liking, subscribing and letting me know your thoughts, and hopefully I'll catch you all again soon.